anytime you start to learn something that challenges what someone else believes, it's immediately going to be a very tense relationship there. It's going to immediately, there's going to be some walls thrown up because all of a sudden I'm challenging what you've always believed.
Right.
I don't think I processed that because I was thinking this is just the truth. This is what it's got to be. This is how we've got to do it.
Right.
And because of that, I was just very zealous. As you said, I was telling you everything like, wow, look at this. So I would say for us, at least, that was a don't. Like that was a don't. I think I should have been far more respectful of your faith tradition and how embedded into you that was.
I remember conversations that we would have where I would tell you, you could say all the things in the world that are true till I'm blue in the face. I just don't believe that that's true. So it was this clash of, we both acknowledge that there's objective truth, that truths can't contradict each other according to the law of non-contradiction, but we both were resolute in what we thought absolute truth was when it came to Catholic Church and then my faith tradition. And at that point, no one's going to come out the winner through debate. I thought that was a sign of unity between us, of almost, if I kneel down beside you, I'm okay with all this Catholic stuff. And I didn't want to be fake, so I never did that.
You didn't want me to think that you were okay with it either.
Right.
Yeah.
Or almost that I was, that we were unified in that, because we weren't.
Yeah.
And a lot of it boils down to, I really wanted you to acknowledge my pain. And I never really felt like you understood how hard it was with all the downstream consequences of telling my family and my friends, and just the heartbreak that would cause and the pain that I could see coming from me ever potentially converting.
Hey guys, welcome to Lexio. I'm your host, Sean Hiller. I'm joined by my beautiful wife, Ellie, today, and we are going to discuss really the difficulties, the trials, the tribulations of what it was like for us to become Catholic, especially when I was trying to become Catholic. Ellie really did not want to become Catholic at first, and that caused, to say waves in our marriage is an understatement, but it caused a lot of waves in our marriage, and marriage was very difficult for quite a long time. And as we were talking through Ellie's story in a previous video that we did, so many of the comments were, wow, this is what we're going through. I'm going through this right now with my wife, with my husband. It's a difficult situation. And it's one of the things, like, what do you do? How do you navigate this? For myself in particular, I was feeling the Lord draw me into his beautiful church, draw me into something that I knew was efficacious for my soul, something that was going to be great for my family, something that was going to get us closer to becoming saints. That's the goal. But the whole time this is happening, I'm feeling my marriage almost as if it's being ripped apart, almost as if we're drifting apart, and that doesn't feel right if the Lord's pulling me one direction. So all these crazy thoughts, it's just a very, very difficult experience. So we thought it'd be a great idea today to talk about that and kind of give a little bit of like a do's and don'ts aspect, but not even that, just really tell you what happened in our life and how this maybe can help someone who's also going through this. So
yeah. We don't want to be preachy because we haven't gotten anything figured out. There's no perfect algorithm for becoming Catholic, but I think it would have been helpful for me during that season of tension when you were actually becoming Catholic and I wanted nothing to do with it. Yeah. It would have been helpful to find a video of someone, who understood the pain, a couple that understood the pain of that, but then also could offer some practical advice on how they navigated it. Not that I would need to take each step that they did, but I would love to share the things that really drew me in with curiosity that you started living out. And then I also want to share the things that repulsed me, not because you were doing anything wrong per se, but
I might have been.
No,
I definitely might have been.
No, you weren't. Like, it was a pride in my heart more than anything else, but also the common things that the more couples we meet, that one might have converted before the other, or maybe one hasn't converted at all. Yeah. Things that it kind of are a common thread that end up not going very well when one spouse does it. And so we want to just share and take what you will from it, but I think it could be really helpful.
Absolutely. And I think it would be helpful to start with kind of where we were prior to all this starting. And I remember Ellie and I, we describe ourselves as old souls. So this is what we like to do. We like to drink a cup of coffee and we like to talk. This is it. Black coffee. Yes. Nothing added. But so we would talk about theology. We would talk about the things that the Lord's revealing in our lives, the things that's happening. This is when we were Protestants. And that was never an issue. Like, it was always something that was welcome. We enjoyed it. It was still probably our favorite topic to talk about these things that we've learned. But then we've told the story a lot, but then Catholicism started to come into the mix. I started to become Catholic. I started to delve more into the Catholic Church. And at first, it was very much like, wow, Ellie, this is what the Catholic Church teaches about this topic. This is amazing. And you would be like, this is great. Yeah, that you were very interested and wanted to know at first. But as soon as I turned that corner and you started to realize, okay, this is more than just him looking into this church, he's starting to want to become Catholic. That's when it shifted to where I would start to tell you something that I was learning about the Catholic Church. And it was very much, I don't know if I want to hear that. All we ever talk about is Catholicism. Let's just talk about our faith without making it so Catholic. That's kind of what it came back to. So the brakes began to be pumped. And that was something that was so foreign for our relationship because we always love to talk about it in general. But so I guess my first question for you is going to be, what was that initial thing that caused you to pump the brakes when you had always been so interested in anything theological, but then it was all of a sudden like, I don't know if I can do this.
I think for me, a lot of this comes down to personality and the dynamic of the husband and wife relationship and their individual personalities and characteristics. And for me, I was always so used to my faith being my own and having something that I really understood or thought I understood and had a good grasp on. And so when I saw you veering from a lot of the things that we had a mutual agreement on, matters of faith and doctrine, and that we really connected over, that caused a sense of panic in me that I liken it to the child whose parents are the crazy sports parents, and they force their kid to do all the sports things, right? Like the kid might have had a natural love for basketball, but because the parents were so overbearing with making him practice for an hour a day, or watching film, or just being overly overbearing with sports, then the kid starts to resent the sport. Whereas if he had grown to have a natural love or a natural affection for that thing, be it sport in this situation, then there's breathing room. He has room to breathe. And you never did this to me, but that's the way it felt. I started to grow, have this resentment towards Catholicism because of your zeal for it.
Yeah, and I do think I did that a little bit. And I guess I'll say this too. Don't mean to cut you off, but I guess one of the don'ts I would say would be, I was viewing this as, I'm studying the Catholic Church, and I was viewing it as, okay, if I'm learning the truth, then obviously you're going to be open to that. But one of the things that I think we all have to learn, and I myself had to learn, is that anytime you start to learn something that challenges what someone else believes, it's immediately going to be a very tense relationship there. It's going to immediately, there's going to be some walls thrown up because all of a sudden I'm challenging what you've always believed.
Right.
And I don't think I processed that because I was thinking, this is just the truth. This is what it's got to be. This is how we've got to do it.
Right.
And because of that, I think I was not pushy. I was just very zealous. As you said, I was telling you everything, like, wow, look at this. There's history of Peter in the Old Testament. There's history of a pope in the Old Testament. And we started talking through all that, and the walls were up. So I would say for us, at least, that was a don't. Like that was a don't. I think I should have been far more respectful of your faith tradition and how embedded into you that was, and find a different way to relay what the Catholic teaching was. I don't know what that way could have been.
Yeah, and it's looking back, I'm grateful for the conviction that you had, because it was something that I came back to a lot in the journey of my just learning and conversion. Ultimately, I wondered, it piqued the curiosity in me of why is he so zealous? In the moment, it was a huge turnoff. Yeah. I couldn't stand the fact that you were trying to proselytize or basically convert me. And some women might respond well to that, but I didn't. And there's a lot of other things I want to bring up that you did really, really, really well once you realized that this was not working. Yeah. And I remember conversations that we would have where I would tell you, you could say all the things in the world that are true till I'm blue in the face. I just don't believe that that's true. So it was this clash of we both acknowledge that there's objective truth, that truths can't contradict each other according to the law of non-contradiction. But we both were resolute in what we thought absolute truth was when it came to Catholic Church and then my faith tradition. And at that point, no one's going to come out the winner through debate.
Yeah.
You know, it's so good to grapple with those things, because I did learn a lot, and that we had good conversation a lot of times. It would usually end in a fight, but it would start out really well. But ultimately, as I write in my book, it was your lived love that converted me. And that spoke a language without words.
Praise God. It's all Jesus.
And then we can bring up the Bible studies too, where other people were able to actually say things that helped. But
well, let's do that. I would love to start there with the things that I did right. Let's start with the things I did right and the do's. And I know you had a few of them that you wanted to bring up on your. I don't know if that's a good time to bring the list up.
Yeah, I have a lot of them. Yeah,
we can do that, and then we can save everything I did wrong till the end. So maybe people aren't listening at that point. I'm just kidding.
But no, which you really didn't do, other than the.
Oh, I have.
You really didn't do anything else. Like, you, first of all, you didn't do anything wrong in general. You were following the truth. Let's be clear about that. I was doing things wrong.
Where I can interject more, because I think back and all the things that I wish I wouldn't have done. I can probably interject more there.
But you were the one that was ultimately. I don't want to say right, but I mean, you were the one that was humbly pursuing truth, and I was standing firm in my protest, which at the time I believed I was keeping us from heresy. But anyway, so the first thing that comes to mind, we've talked a lot about our butting heads and how we would have many just moments of silence where we just couldn't talk about serious things anymore. Yeah. And it was better just to not talk at all, because we would just fight. And I'm embarrassed to say that, but that's just the reality of where we were. Yeah. But the first thing that comes to mind, a lot of this comes back to breathing room. When you gave me room to breathe, and for the unfolding of my own conversion to happen in my interior life, I was finally able to let my walls down. So that's the golden thread through all the things that you did right. Well, I need to stop saying right. The things that you did that really gave me room to breathe were what made the biggest difference. Now, of course, it was prayer, communion of the saints, all of that. I'll never forget, this studio that we have is in our basement. And so we have a stairwell going up to the left of me, up to the main floor. And then our garage is down here on obviously the basement level. And I would coach CrossFit classes many mornings, 5 a.m. And Sean had always been a prayerful person, but I started to notice in the same season where we were fighting a ton. This was before you were Catholic. I would walk down to get in my car to go coach the 5 a.m. class, and all the lights would be off in this studio, which it wasn't a studio at the time, it was just a book.
Yeah, it's a library.
And there was this really soft blanket that Sean would have on the ground, and this is a tile floor, so just he would have one blanket, and all the lights were off, so he wasn't trying to be ostentatious or noticeable. Honestly, if I don't even remember the first time I saw you, but it would have been something that was easy to miss. But I walked down the stairs, and Sean's laying on the ground on this blanket, face down, prostrate, not prostrate. No, prostrate.
Prostrate.
Not
yeah.
prostrate.
Yeah,
always
not
say that
prostrate.
Right. He was lying prostrate on the ground. Yeah. You should keep that in there.
Okay.
And praying. And I don't recall you doing the rosary or anything. I knew you were praying. And I started to see every single morning you would pray like this. And you would spend some of the time reading, some of the time praying. But I remember there were moments where that made me angry. There were moments that it really softened my heart. I would have a huge mixture of emotions depending on the day. Yeah. And the reason I was angry sometimes when I would see you praying like that is because it was ultimately conviction that I didn't realize. But I felt that in your search, you were almost like trying to one-up me in spirituality or piety. And, all this stuff makes me look so bad. And I am such a sinner. And I think it's important to share with people that I met you before you were a Christian. You were an atheist and I was a Christian of 26 years. Yeah. And so that spiritual pride that I had that I didn't even know was there started to rear its ugly head. You became a Christian, and then when you were on your way to becoming Catholic, I saw how you were it's not a competition, but you were growing in your faith in a way that I wasn't. And it upset me.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that, your whole journey to become Catholic was just going to be basically me being left in the dust in spiritual piety. And it made me feel bad about myself, and it turned into anger. And that's the truth of it.
Yeah. I remember that phase, and I remember my prayer life. I'd always prayed, but prayer was something I struggled with so much. And then learning about the Catholic Church, studying the Catholic Church, I realized that no, prayer is the work of a Christian, and prayer is something that I have to dedicate far more time to. So around the time that we're struggling in our marriage is really around the time I very much got convicted of, I've got to pray. I've got to cultivate this relationship with God. So I started to implement that. And I do remember you coming down those stairs a few times in the morning and me thinking like, I hope she doesn't see me. I hope she doesn't see me down here. And then there were other very sweet times where you would come down and you would like walk over to me and gently rub my back or something like that. So I definitely got that wave of emotion.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
But I think too, it's, there's something I was going to say about that.
Well, I'll say one more thing and maybe you can think of it too. But I've been there as well when I see someone else doing something that is kind of convicting, like, wow, I should be doing that. That's clearly helping their relationship with God. But I do think you could do that in a way that's probably not pious, that probably is trying to one up. But you said this to me before, and it's always stuck out in my head. But so oftentimes we see someone practicing virtue. We want to make fun of it because we're convicted ourselves that, wow, that is actual virtue. I see that's virtue that's not in my life. So what am I to do with it? Am I to humble myself and do what they're doing, or am I just to poke fun of it and make fun of it? And I've done that as well. I think you were in that phase.
Oh yeah. And this is, I think about the proverb, a humble and contrite spirit. I don't know the exact reference, but when some of the meanest people I know are people that are very astute in theology and can tell you all the right things, and they are, and I act like there's a lot of them. There's not many, but I've met a few people. Specifically, I'm thinking of like some Calvinist people I know, and then also even Catholics that they have too much head knowledge that it hasn't pierced our heart. And so when I saw you finally, you were never mean, but when I saw you finally stop trying to convince me and debate me, and then you focus on your interior life and move toward this humility, and even just posturing, laying down on the ground was a posture of humility, not, hey, I know all the right things, or I found this truth that Ellie hasn't found, of like, almost I interpreted it as you saying like, Lord, please help me, because I can't change. I'm not the Holy Spirit. I can't change my life, but you prayed. And so that was huge for me. That was the first thing the hammer that started to crack my hard heart. And you did that constantly. And then before I move on to something else, staying in the avenue of prayer at night, we had always prayed together as a couple. Yeah. Extemporaneous prayer. I think that's what it is called. Yeah. But you started adding in more liturgical prayer. And you were not doing anything crazy because you knew I probably wouldn't. I tried the rosary one time. That did not work out. Yeah, very well. We would do the Divine Mercy. But we did the chaplet. You love the chaplet. You always love the chaplet. I thought the chaplet was very beautiful. And so we would do that every now and then you would at least always throw in that last part of the Divine Mercy chaplet. Yeah. And that was very beautiful to me. So I just started to see your prayer life change in a way that you were already someone who I at least saw pray a lot. And then you entered even more deeply into this conversation with God. So that was huge. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on prayer before I move on to the next one. Yeah. But the second thing that pops into my mind is how you dealt with sin. How you dealt with your sin. Hey guys, I want to take a second to tell you about Black Cassock Coffee. This is my favorite coffee company in America. The guys from Black Cassock reached out and asked if we could do a partnership. So I looked a little bit into their business and what they do. And not only is this delicious coffee, but it's delicious coffee at a cause that you're going to love to support. First off, Black Cassock Coffee is a small coffee company. So when you order a bag of coffee from them, they roast it the moment you order it, not a month before, not a few months before, the moment you order it. So when your coffee comes in, it is fresh and it is delicious, and you can tell the difference between other types of coffee.
Also, every time you buy a bag of Black Casket coffee, you are no longer just a customer. You are now a patron of Catholic education. A part of the proceeds goes toward Catholic education across our nation, elementary, high school, seminarian levels. You are helping to fund that. You can subscribe and save on their website, meaning you don't have to think about ordering coffee every month. It just comes to your door and you're ready for a good cup of coffee. You can go to blackcassetcoffee.com/Sean Hiller to get 10% off of your order today. blackcassetcoffee.com/Sean Hiller for 10% off.
And I remember many, many times that this theme would pop up, but the biggest one, the day after we had a pretty big knockdown and drag out fight, metaphorically.
Yeah.
You went to work and I was doing something in the kitchen that day because I didn't have work, and I found your journal on the kitchen table, and usually, you would kind of journal different places throughout the house, but I'm not one to kind of snoop around. But I remember something in me was just like, just open the journal, like just see what all this is about. You're journaling every morning. I would love to know what it's about. Sorry, you were journaling every night. This was a nighttime thing.
Yeah.
And there were just a few lines with some dates, tracing back probably a week. And I knew you had done this a lot more than a week, but you would tear some pages out. I later figured out in hindsight. But you were doing an examination of conscience. And I'd heard about this in some of our conversations, but I didn't really know what it was. And this, you hadn't written anything down that would have been like
scandalous.
Or like, no, like inappropriate for me. I wasn't trying to like snoop.
Yeah.
So it was more sins that I almost would have probably been like, wait, this is a sin. Like, why is he confessing this? You wouldn't care me sharing this, but like texting and driving. I remember seeing that, like, what in the world? But the theme was that you were writing down your sins at the end of the day, and you took the time to do a daily recap of the times that you had grieved God by sinning that day, whether it's venial or mortal. And that struck a chord in me. And I showed up a lot in there of ways that you had written down that you weren't loving me well. And let me pause. Did you put that on the kitchen table so I would accidentally see it? Because I hope that I'm not like being snoopy, but
I'm thinking back, and to be very honest, I think during that season there were just a lot of times where I would sleep in a different room, if I'm being totally honest. And so I think it was a time where my morning rhythm was kind of thrown off or something like that, or my nightly rhythm or something, and I just had it laying out on the counter because my rhythm was messed up. Yeah.
So that makes it feel better, though. You probably wouldn't have had it laying out if there was something like super, serious you didn't want me to see. Cause,
well, if you'd have gotten a hold of that thing when I first became Catholic, there would have been more serious stuff in there. But
and we
praise God, I've started to learn to deal with my sin a little bit better. Praise God.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like you don't sin at all, but I'm saying I'm not like one that's going through your text messages or anything.
Yeah, you've never done that.
But I think it was really a blessing from the Lord that I found that, because started to see your battle with sin, and that was something that had always bothered me as I grew up in the church of my youth. People didn't take their sins seriously. And I don't want to generalize. Of course, some people did, but by and large, sin was a big deal, but also not a big deal, because all of our sins had been forgiven when Jesus died on the cross. I'm quoting people, and that's true, but it almost made it seem like, okay, because all your sin has been forgiven and you cannot lose your salvation, sin is almost not as big of a deal as it really is. It doesn't have the capability of wounding our soul to the point of wounding our relationship with God and destroying that grace that He puts inside of us, or gives us. And so when I saw you started to do that, I respected it a lot, because I wanted people to do that more in the church of my youth, or the church tradition that I was actually in at the time. Right. So that was huge to me, is your examination of conscience. And it was very disciplined and structured. And then you told me you would, tear out the pages and, start a new week. Right. I don't know if I also found, I can't remember if this is when you were already Catholic or not, because then you were going to confession, and that might have been why you were tearing the pages out. Yeah. Was that?
Maybe so. I'm not sure when you found it, but every time I go to confession, I would tear the page out and throw it away.
So then you were probably already Catholic.
Probably, yeah.
I can't remember. So that was huge. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that.
Well, I think it's something that of all the things I did poorly, and we'll get to some of that, I think one of the things I did well, the overarching theme was that I was very intentional as to what we did in our lives and how we started to set up our life in regard to that. I think you have to be, if you're the person that's convicted of becoming Catholic and your spouse isn't, I think your level of intentionality has to go up so much. And these different ways, maybe, there's a chance I did leave that on the counter, just hoping that maybe she would see this. There's a good chance I would do this. And I've heard this once, that if your wife or your husband journals, then that book is not closed off to you. As the spouse, you should be reading their journal. Your dad is the king of this. Oh yeah, absolutely. You should be researching your spouse, right? That's what you actually should be doing. So there's no off limits there. You should know what's going through their head. But I think I was intentional about doing some of these things. And also one of the biggest things is who we got around. I knew that everyone's heard that phrase, show me who your friends are, and I'll show you who you'll be in 5 years. And I think that's true regardless of what you're doing. So one of the things that I knew we had to do, because we had left our church at one point, so we lost that entire group of people who we were around. I wanted to cultivate a group that would be strong people. I wanted to have very faithful Christians in this group. I wanted to have very faithful Catholics in this group. I wanted to have people who were around that weren't me, who you were hearing from. So one of the things that I think that was a good thing that we did was we developed some really strong Catholic friends who we really just happened to come across. I'm very thankful for Zach and Emily. We really just came across them, and they were totally on board with doing a Bible study and hanging out. And you got to bounce so many of your ideas, but there were ideas that you wouldn't bring up to me. There were thoughts that you wouldn't bring up to me. You got to bounce so many of your thoughts off of them, this other entity over here, as opposed to me, someone who is hard for us to discuss things with at the time.
And Zach, the husband of that couple, is a convert, so he understood. Whereas I would have struggled if it had been just a bunch of Catholics who had been Catholic their whole life and didn't understand just become Catholic. What's so difficult? So it was really helpful, but at the same time, that's a double-edged sword. Okay. Even just thinking about a lot of the couples that we now know in our life who are dealing with the same thing. One might be Catholic and really wants the other spouse to become Catholic, but starting a Catholic Bible study would have been, I struggled with that a lot. There were nights where it was really great, but then there were also nights where I would get really mad. I'm like, well, I'm not Catholic. I just lost my Protestant church community.
You would tell me that too, yeah.
Because our Protestant community group met in our home. So I went this hard stop where I just cold turkeyed this group that we were leading in our Protestant church. And like, of course, we were cordial. Like there was nothing malicious in the split, but it was basically, hey, my husband is going to become Catholic, so we don't feel right leading this anymore. So then that kind of dissolved in a charitable way, and then we went straight to this Catholic Bible study essentially in our home, which for me, it was touch and go. So I wouldn't really put that in the bucket of, I can't really compartmentalize that because the Lord used it in such a beautiful way, where that was the night I learned about Eucharistic miracles and was a huge turning point in my journey to learning about the Eucharist and then ultimately accepting it as true. So
you think that could have gone either way?
It depends on the couple. I think ultimately it just comes back to being really, really charitable and sensitive. If you're the spouse that's Catholic, be really sensitive to the fact that sometimes if things feel forced, again, that breathing room goes away of like, now I feel like I'm forced to sit here in this Bible study and I'm not Catholic, So for me, it was great, but I think it's just something to be sensitive to. And ultimately, all of this comes back to just, if you are the spouse that is Catholic, it's so much about how you love the other person. Yeah. Because they know, I knew that I was I knew that there was a divide in our marriage. I knew that we weren't unified to the fullest degree. We both loved the Lord. We were both baptized believers, so we were both adopted sons and daughters. I'm not saying I wasn't Christian by any means, or that Protestants aren't Christians. That is not what I'm saying. But there was a tension there. So we know, as the spouse that's not Catholic, that there's something going on. Like, we don't need the other spouse to remind us of that or necessarily make that super obvious. And I think the Lord uses that as something that we as the spouse that was not yet Catholic can constantly come back to, and the Lord uses that to soften our heart. And so it's almost like, as contradictory as it sounds, letting the spouse that's not Catholic just kind of notice that is what really can start to open the door to curiosity and wanting to learn more.
And absolutely. And I think to that too, like the key there is the spouse who is trying to minister or talk with the other spouse. Charity is you have to be charitable. You have to be loving the entire time. I think that's the key. And knowing that whatever you do in prayer, God is going to take care of the things that you do that aren't well if you are doing things in love. If you are acting in love, not just purely intellectual, trying to force someone in the right direction, God's gonna take up all the slack. And I think that's something that, like this Bible study that I tried to do, I thought it was a great idea to get you around Catholics. We both acknowledged that we needed to have some form of Bible study, some form of group of Christians that were around. We both knew that, and I happened to make it a Catholic group. So even like you said, that could have went either way. Praise God, he made it. He took something that could have been bad and made it good. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, I'll take that.
Yeah, and I think the charity thing, it was undeniable that you loved me better, that you were loving me more intentionally, more deeply, because you were falling more in love with the Lord and with Mary and with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so that bled over into our relationship, even with the strife and then the dealing with the NFP struggles and all of that. Yeah. I say in my book, in the most paradoxical way, I felt more loved by you than any other time in our marriage when we had the most dissension. Yeah. But you were loving me so intentionally and so well. That is the key, because it's so curious. Why are we having so much why is there so much disunity, at least in our intellectual understanding of the faith, but then I felt more loved by you than ever? That contradiction exposes the dialectic of that, exposes such a beautiful truth that it made me want to eventually to have what you had, that was this charity that I had never seen before. And that's probably, if I had to sum all of my personal experience down into some advice, it would be love like you have never loved them before, because you're loving Christ more. You had the Eucharist and I didn't. And it showed. It was nourishing you in a way, in a love that I wasn't necessarily exposed to yet.
Lord, thank you for your guidance. Hey guys, I want to take a second to tell you about To Whom Shall I Go? This is a book that my wife has written about her journey into Catholicism, how she swam the Tiber and came to Rome. It was not the easiest swim, and there might have been a little bit of drowning involved, but she eventually made it to Rome. And this is her documenting that story, the trials, the tribulations, all the problems that she had with the Catholic Church as an evangelical Protestant, and how she began to answer those questions. Theology of the body plays a major role, and the tides of our marriage were also quite a bit involved in this. It is a fascinating read. It's a wonderful book. We've had so many people comment on it, saying that this is something that they're going through right now. So hopefully Ellie's able to relate to people in an amazing way. So I ask you, if you haven't already, to get a copy of the book. And if you have gotten a copy of the book, please leave her a review on Amazon, so it helps us to reach more people. And hopefully we can all have an answer to that question, to whom shall I go?
Another thing that I look back on in hindsight that was really helpful for me was to go to Mass alone. And this is when you had become Catholic at this point. I started to notice that I would go to Mass with you a good bit, and eventually I started going to Mass with you all the time, even if I would leave kind of frustrated or we would drive home in silence. I was, at this point, I was going to Mass with you. And I had a CrossFit competition in Nashville, Tennessee. So went up there by myself because you had to be here to work. And I remember I had gotten so used to going to Mass every single Sunday that at a few weeks prior Bible study with Zach and Emily, we had talked about holy days of obligation, and then also how Catholics are required to go to Mass every Sunday or for the vigil. And I remember, right about this too, more in depth, but how I brought up in our Bible study
to Zach,
basically all the reasons that I might need a dispensation, which is so embarrassing. If I had a CrossFit competition out of town, for example, I remember when I asked that question in Bible study, I had a competition a few weeks before, which was semifinals, and there was no way I would have been able to make any mass with the heat schedule of that particular competition. There were events going up until 8 p.m. on Saturday night, and then events started as early as 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. And so going late into the day on Sunday. So I remember that freaked me out a little bit of like, is Catholicism so legalistic that I could never get a dispensation for, being competitive? Like, basically it was my sport. It was my job at the time. Even though I wasn't, making a lot of money, it was something that I treated like a job. And so I brought it up, and I remember Zach told me, he said that there was nothing in the world that would be more important than every Sunday going to visit Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament.
Go Zach.
And I remember that landed, and I didn't say anything at the time in Bible study, but it landed. And a few weeks later, fast forward, when I had this competition in Tennessee, I remember thinking, I'd gotten there on Thursday, and I remember thinking on Friday, okay, I need to go to Mass either on Saturday night or Sunday morning just to test out if this would work for me to become Catholic and figure out with competitions and different things if I could somehow make this obligation thing work. And while I'm someone that always goes to church, it just was not as big of a deal if I had missed my Protestant service.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I had a lot of competitions, I could skip.
As a Protestant, we would, if we were out of town for the weekend, if we were going somewhere for the weekend, we would either watch it online or we just wouldn't go, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
We didn't think about
but
it.
at the same, I want to say, like, we took very seriously going to church.
Yeah,
as Protestants.
for sure.
So it's not like we would ever just not go to church or do anything. Like, we would always either do some type of Bible study or watch it online, like you said. So I knew it was a big deal not to miss church, but I didn't want that obligation. So anyway, look at the heat schedule for this event in Tennessee, and I started to realize, okay, it's going to be tough to make a mass, so I'm going to have to go really, really early. And I won't tell the whole story because I wrote about it, but that was my first experience going to mass by myself. And when I walked in, it was a super early service. It was either 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. I can't remember. I was by myself, and I used the kneeler for the first time of my own volition before the service started. I'd always used the kneeler during the consecration and, times when everyone did it, or it was the proper form. But I had never used it early before the mass started, just to pray in silence. More so because I thought that was a sign of unity between us, of almost, if I kneel down beside you, I'm okay with all this Catholic stuff. And I didn't want to be fake, so I never did that.
You didn't want me to think that you were okay with it either.
Right. Yeah. Or almost that I was, that we were unified in that, because we weren't. Yeah. And a lot of it boils down to, I really wanted you to acknowledge my pain. And I never really felt like you understood how hard it was with all the downstream consequences of telling my family and my friends, and just the heartbreak that would cause, and the pain that I could see coming from me ever potentially converting. Yeah. And while you were so charitable and you did see it, I think I maybe needed a little bit more acknowledgement of how tough that would be, and it wasn't anything you did wrong. But
and if you are going through this, we understand how difficult Sundays are. Like, Sundays during that time were incredibly difficult. I don't care which service, because we would go to a lot of times both services. No matter how good the service was, no matter how emotional you felt or whatever it was, man, walking out of there, Satan was attacking. Yeah. He did not want this to be okay in our lives. And I remember those Sundays being so difficult.
Yeah. Before and after Mass. But yeah, so I remember getting to this Mass, used the kneeler, and I just was looking up at the crucifix alone in the solitude of this morning Mass before really anyone had gotten in. And I was a captive audience. The Lord was able to really open my eyes to the beauty of the Mass, even way before I was Catholic. Yeah. Because I wasn't worried about what you were doing, what you were thinking about me. I wasn't even focusing on the troubles we were having in our marriage. It was just, I was there to worship, and I was praying with my body, kneeling, saying, before I even had fully surrendered or fully humbled myself, my body was almost leading me first. By kneeling, it was almost like that action paved the way for the humility that I didn't have yet. Oh, wow. And yeah, so my advice in that is if you are the spouse that maybe is on a path of discernment or even just anger, try going to mass on your own and just seeing it for what it is, as if you were a single person trying to discern, right? And I'm not saying ever divide the marriage by any means or pretend you're not married. That's not what I'm saying. It's just go and give yourself that space to just be alone and see it for what it is without someone around.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that helps everyone involved, because you can experience it and you can help decide, like, okay, is this something that's good? Is this something that's bad in your own space? And I remember so often, for me at least, because I wanted to talk to you about this so much, and I was hoping that early on at least, I was hoping that somewhere along the way, the words would come to me that would just click in your mind, and that would be it. And for all the guys out here, and you can relate, like, what can I say that's going to cause her to say, oh, yes, this is good, true, and beautiful. Let me come this way. And that's just not how it works. And I remember one of the times for me, I would keep trying to say, I remember we got in the biggest fight of all of them, the argument that, and I'm just like a fool over and over again screaming, Ellie, this is the truth. We've got to do this. This is the truth. And that did not work. That blew up. And it was shortly after that I realized that it is not going to be through words. My words aren't going to do anything. And I've said this many times, but in the midst of that story, I think the greatest thing I did was just be silent. Was just be silent. I'll never forget this. I've told you this a lot. We went to watch the movie Nefarious with your mom and your dad, and Zane had already become Catholic at this point. He knew the struggles we were going through. And after that movie, I am in the process of literally learning everything I can possibly learn about Catholicism. And we're sitting in the car. Zane is outside of the car. He's speaking into you in the shotgun seat. And for 2 hours, you had a conversation with your dad. You were crying. Zane was crying. It was an intense conversation. You were butting heads. And for 2 hours, I did not say one word. And that might have been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because so badly I wanted to interject. I wanted to speak. And I knew that it wasn't my place. It was not my time to speak.
Yeah, and I think this would be edifying for people, is what you said about that moment where things would just click. Yeah. I think if you are someone who's coming from a Protestant tradition, you understand the contrast between the testimony, and then once you become Catholic, we believe that conversion is ongoing. Yeah. And that we're always called to daily lay down our cross and enter into this constant conversion.
This helps, yeah.
And of course, that there's a moment of, initial justification. We believe that as Catholics. But I think it's really helpful, whatever spouse you are in this particular situation, to understand conversion in that light. Of I've been Catholic now for almost 2 years, and I'm just now, there's certain things I'm just now barely even scratching the surface on and understanding. And I think when you can come to terms with the fact that there very rarely will be that scales fall from the eyes moment in the Protestant view of kind of just the testimony, where it's leading up to this climax, and all of a sudden, you're saved at that moment forever and ever. That's it. And that's not how it is. And that's one thing that I love so much about this Catholic life and adventure, is that it's daily, something new, something that you can further dive into the depths of. And I think that that's encouraging and helpful. Like, even today, I'm just now appreciating more of Mary, and I'm not one, like you pray the rosary every day, and I've been a lot slower in that area. And the Lord has used recently a book I just read. It's called Into the Deep by Abigail Favali. I think that's how you say her name. And I was sharing with you this morning the beauty of what I was learning about Mary through her words. And, I told you this Sunday, I saw in the bulletin that there was this opportunity to do a consecration to Mary. And a week ago, I would have just looked at that and been like, moved on. Yeah. But after 2 years of being Catholic, the Lord is just now opening my eyes to the beauty. Yeah. And I acknowledged Mary, and I accepted all the dogmas of the Catholic faith that we have to in regards to Mary. Wasn't really opposed, but I didn't really understand the beauty of everything. And so it's just so cool that as a couple, we will constantly see each other grow in our conversion. And so I don't know if that's helpful.
No, yeah, for sure. Our hearts continue to convert. And I will say, shifting gears a little bit, some of the things that I know I did well because I had other people putting this in my life was, first off, prayer, 100% prayer so many different ways.
Always.
I prayed the rosary every day, continue to do that. It's one of the best things I think you can do as a Christian in general. But I was always advised by a sweet older lady, I've told the story before, to pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy for you. So every night I would pray that Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and even some nights we would pray it together. There would be a few nights we pray it together depending on how we were doing overall. So that was something that I know had immense help. The Lord answered those prayers. You came into the church on Divine Mercy Sunday. He showed us his favor there. But also our priest, I met with our priest a lot, and one of the times I met with him, this is so funny. I thought he was joking at first, but he said, "Do you have a green scapular?" And I didn't even know what a scapular was, so I had to ask him what a scapular is in the first place. And but I have this little green scapular right here. Well, this isn't the green scapular. This is what was behind the green scapular. But he said, "Get a green scapular, bring it to me, and he'll bless it." And then he wanted to put it around you somewhere. So I thought, okay, what's the big deal? And he's essentially, a green scapular helps. Is there to help receive grace so that someone can be healed who has an issue, or for someone to convert in their faith who is hesitant to conversion. So he told me that, and I thought, okay, this could work. But right before I left, he said, "By the way, you have it blessed now. Make sure she can't find it." Wherever it was.
Great advice.
So I didn't have your consent. But so we had the green scapular tucked under your mattress this whole time.
I'll tell them my fun. No, keep going.
Yeah.
But
So that was something that we did. We praying the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, had the green scapular under there. We also had every person. This is the most beautiful thing that I remember. I'm newly Catholic. No one in the Catholic atmosphere around us knows who I am, but I continue to have people coming up to me who knew me. Apparently word got around, I don't know, but they were asking me about you. So we literally had hundreds of people praying for us who we didn't even know, who were constantly telling me, "Hey, we know what's going on with you guys. We know how difficult this can be. We're praying for you."
And the sisters.
The sisters, oh, wow, that's just a blessed moment. I was in confession after I'd become Catholic, and I'm in the line for confession, and I see these wonderful Dominican sisters, and I love they're not their Catholic. I love their habit. And I went up to them. I said, "Hey, I don't know if I can say this right now, but you guys look so cool." And they just loved it. They
had the coolest color.
I said they look cool, the coolest out of all the religious sisters. But and I struck up a conversation with them. We talked, and they were just they were so loving. They invited us to come pray the liturgy hours with them, and that was a beautiful time. I think that had an impact on you as well, seeing them go through the motions of the liturgy. And all these things came into play that I knew helped, regardless of whether you convert or not, were helping us come closer in our faith to Jesus.
Yeah.
So I know it's powerful.
I think it was the week after I became Catholic. I'm so glad it was providential that I did not find the scapular before this. I would have probably thought that was a little superstitious, but before I knew what it was.
Yeah.
But I was making the bed, and for some reason I never make the bed this aggressively where I lift the mattress up off the bed, but I, for whatever reason, did it this time, and this green little thing fell onto the ground. I'm like, what in the world is this? And you were in the bed, or no, you weren't in the bed because I was making it, but you were in the room. I don't remember. And I said, "What is this?" And you told me about it, and we just had the biggest laugh because it was just so. At that point, I was really thankful it was there, but I gave you a really hard time for it.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. The Lord used it and worked through it. But talking about kind of the cloud of witnesses thing.
Yeah.
Claudia, there's a very sweet lady at a parish that we frequently attend in Birmingham. It's not our home parish, but we love it. It's the one my dad goes to. A lady came up to us literally probably a few months ago. So we'd already been Catholic about 2 years at this point, and she shared with me that she had been praying. I had no idea who she was. Mm-hmm. That she had been praying for me ever since she met you in the confession line.
Yep.
She heard your story in the confession line. Started praying for me ever since then. Had never met me, had no idea who I was. Gave you a miraculous medal.
I have it right over here, yeah.
Which, no, actually, it's up on my jewelry counter.
Oh, I guess you moved
it from you. And that I actually put on my jewelry, a little bowl on my makeup counter before I was Catholic. I thought it was beautiful, and I didn't know that it was something someone had given you who was praying for me.
Yeah.
But I remember just looking at it often because I thought it was beautiful, and then now full circle, I'm seeing just all of these things that were under the surface that the Lord was doing and things that were brewing, so that people could spur me on without me even knowing. And it was just, man, it was so cool we hear stories like this all the time.
Yeah.
So yes, that was huge, is the scapular. And what else did you do?
Well, I mean, there were a few other things that I can also think of.
Oh, I have something.
Okay, what you got?
Unless you had something.
I was gonna go some of the don'ts, some of the things I should.
Okay,
I wish I wouldn't have done.
This is super fast,
okay.
but I was so grateful that you were willing to meet with anyone that I asked you to meet with when I was trying to get Protestant pastors involved, to make sure that, not involved, but like us go sit with them and share kind of the things that we were wrestling through, and the new things that you were considering, to kind of just get some pushback so you weren't in an echo chamber. And I met with priests, so we did this equally. But I think that that's a form of charity, to be willing to go sit with someone that the other spouse might want you to, just showing that you're willing to be open to being wrong, even though now I firmly believe like you were following truth, and I was just not searching really. I was more just adamant. And so anyway, but that showed me, that gave me a lot of comfort that we were still on the same team. And I think, remind yourself often, you are on the same team. I lost sight of that, and that's when things started to go awry. Of Sean's not trying to compete with me. He's not trying to do anything that's harmful to our marriage. We're still one flesh. We're still on the same goal towards, or ultimately our heart's desire is Jesus Christ and the truth. And so sometimes I went down a few rabbit trails, and it took me a little bit longer, but that's the beauty of conversion, is it's both the mystical body of Christ and the communion of the saints, but it's also an interior conversion as well, where it is, something that you have to come to in your own heart and mind as well, and ultimately assent to. It can't be, I'm just becoming Catholic because Sean did. That doesn't usually end up super well, unless I kind of know what I'm agreeing to.
Yeah. So. I agree. And I think if you have a right thinking spouse, and I know that's a very broad term, but you were very open to the truth. You were hesitant to me telling a lot of it to you, but you were very open to the truth. So when you came across teachings of the Catholic Church, you could see like we talked about NFP. You could see how difficult NFP could be, but you also saw how, wow, this makes sense. This makes sense if our bodies tell God's story, as you always love to say, as Christopher West says. And then you kept coming across these different theological ideas. So I think something that was very helpful on that is you were truly hungry to know the truth. And I think that's a huge aspect of all of this. If someone in the relationship doesn't want to know the truth, if they don't want to look into it, if they are so hesitant as to not go, then I think the spouse who is wanting them to come, your best friend's prayer, and you recruit everyone you know to pray. And I think that throughout this entire story, I know it's the most effective thing we had going for us, is we had so many people praying for us, regardless of what I said, regardless of what you did, regardless of how our relationship was. So many people cared about us enough to pray for us. And yes.
Yeah. No, it has to be a good faith conversation. You're exactly right. You can't have this long debate or conversation if the other person is not willing to be intellectually honest or open to being wrong. And I don't want to paint it like we never had good conversations. We had long, amazing conversations where you were teaching me, and I did receive a ton of it. It would end usually in friction. Yeah. But we could go hours sometimes and it not yet hit that friction. And so I think that at least goes to show that we were both willing to talk and hash it out.
How was it for you? This sticks out in my mind because it was difficult to do, but I remember we would travel and we would go places and we would be with our friends. And this, even prior to becoming Catholic, I would go, and if we were there on a Sunday, I knew I had to go to Mass. And when we go to Mass, I always tend to dress up, suit and tie. I always tend to do that no matter where we go. How did you perceive that at the time? Was that convicting for you, or was that, Sean's being pious?
Dressing up.
Just the fact that I would go to Mass and dress it up or not dressed up, but the fact that I would go, even though I remember one Sunday we went to the beach with a ton of friends and I was the only person that went, And it was tough for me. So I'm like, I'm about to stick out like a sore thumb around everyone.
Yeah. This is more of a preference thing, but I think it is helpful in a lot of instances when let's say you're the only Catholic. I'm not talking about you specifically, but in a family, and, choosing a mass time that might not interfere with a lot of activities with the family, I think can be really charitable and not cause a response that might be unhelpful. And it ultimately, the person that's responding is the one that's responsible because they're responding. But I think that it was so beautiful to see you dress up. I loved that. I thought that was so reverent. But the times that you would go like at 6 or 7 a.m. and we all knew you went, we all knew. But where it was almost like not in our faces that Sean's all dressed up and he's, walking around getting ready to almost like it felt like he's more reverent than us. Well, you were. I thought that those were the most charitable times when it, again, just wasn't super in your face.
Okay. Yeah.
That I responded the best. And that's probably a fault of my own, but it might be something to consider for someone listening.
Yeah.
And because I know couples too where the husband, maybe they have kids, and the husband will go to the vigil mass, and then he'll go to the service with his wife and children the next day, the Protestant service. And I think that's very charitable in a lot of ways. Each couple needs to make their own decision, but at least in my situation, that's something that I would have longed for.
Was it helpful?
If we had kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't at the time.
Was it helpful when I went to church with you?
That was something you did so well.
Was that actually helpful though? Because I know you said a few times we had some fights on a few of those Sundays because I would go from mass, pick you up, and go to our church service. Maybe it's helpful now.
It was really, really kind of you to respect where I was and go with me. There were times where I could tell you were restless and you just maybe didn't necessarily view it, or I was interpreting that you viewed it not as kind of like the same as mass, and it's not. I mean, I think if we're being honest, it's without the Eucharist, ends up being closer to a Bible study.
Yeah.
And so there were times that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, where I could tell you were just kind of not paying as much attention, or at least as reverent as you were in mass. And in hindsight, I now see, of course he's going to be kneeling and doing all these things at mass if Jesus is truly present.
Yeah.
So there was a difference there that was inevitable. But it was helpful that you went with me. That would have been really, really hard and probably taken me a lot longer to kind of soften had you never gone to church with me and only gone to mass.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would ever really be helpful.
So I would say on the don't side, I would say there's nothing intellectual that you're going to be able to say to someone that's going to be like we talked about a minute ago, that moment where it just clicks for them. And they're like, okay, let's come on.
There might be if they're more humble.
There might be. For us, it was not going to happen. For us, it was not going to happen. And I noticed that it was when we started having silence. I let you start bringing up the conversation. Whenever you started bringing up Catholic topics to me and theology to me, that's when I knew that, okay, at least the door's open. At least there's a possibility here. And then once that happened, the ball definitely started rolling far more. But it took me taking a step back and saying, I've just got to live this. I can't. I'm not a preacher. I can't just sit here and preach to you. I can't just sit here and tell you these concepts that I'm learning so much about. I've just got to live it.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be the turning point for all of it in our relationship, at least.
Yeah. And when I would share with you things that I was slowly learning, when you would just be a really, really amazing listener and then not almost act too excited. Or almost like, oh, at least now I'm going to convert. Because I wasn't at that time. I didn't know. I was just trying to learn. Yeah. That was awesome. That was really cool to see. It was a safe space to talk to you about what I was learning without feeling like you were immediately going to pounce and say, when are you meeting with Father Jarek to set your confirmation date? You know?
Yeah.
So that can be good too.
I don't know if your book's a do's and don'ts, but if you guys haven't read her book, I'm not pitching the book right now. But it could be helpful for someone who's going through this. If you are in a relationship where you want to become Catholic and your spouse doesn't, or even vice versa, it can be helpful just figuring out, putting yourself in the shoes of someone else who has been there and done that, because it's difficult, man. It's difficult. For those of you out there who are going through this, we're praying for you. We'll pray for the unspoken people that we don't know who are going through this, because it was a tough time.
Yeah.
And I guess the biggest thing I'll say on that is just keep the faith. Keep the faith. Go to Jesus, turn to Jesus, to ask for the prayers of the saints. Ask for your spouse to pray for you, even though you aren't doing very well. Pray for each other in this time. I think that's the strongest aspect you can do as a Christian.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to say that there are couples that beautifully live out the gospel and one is not Catholic.
Yeah.
Beautifully live it out. I think that's super important to say, far better than I have. I just think everyone, should be open to the truth, but ultimately I don't want this to sound like it has to be always you both become Catholic. I mean, while that is the ideal, and I think that is what I'm so grateful the Lord did for us, I don't want to sit here on a high horse and say that there's not amazing marriages where each individual is still on their own journey and one might not yet be Catholic.
Yeah.
So that's important to throw out there.
Yeah, definitely area of strife though. But yeah, just know we're praying for you if you're going through this, and pray for us. Yeah, thanks guys. We enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on Lexio.